Well, who's ready for an episode of new woodworking tips that you can use starting right away? Let's jump right in. I always keep some of these little craft sticks in my workshop, and sometimes I use them for mixing two-part epoxy glue. I like them because I don't have to run around my shop trying to find little bits of wood that don't have a lot of fuzzy pieces sticking out on them, and just use it for mixing epoxy. But because they're uniform thickness, I like to use them as shims on my sliding miter saw. Let me show you what that looks like. So there can be times when you're cutting angles on your chop saw or your sliding miter saw, and maybe it's for crown molding or for trim, something like that, and you may have already set the saw at, let's say, 45-degree angle for some angle cuts, and you find out that it's still not quite right. Rather than fuss around with your saw, sometimes it's quicker to just use something like this as a shim, and you just put it in there like that, and now you've got another little degree or so that you can now make that cut without having to readjust your saw every time there's one angle that's a little bit out or not. And because they're thin like that, you could even put in two of them if there was an extreme angle that you wanted to adjust for. So that's what these come in very handy for. After you've glued some boards together, the next thing you need to do is to take the excess glue off. Some people do that while the glue is still a little on the damp side. Other people will wait till it's nice and hard. And whatever your system is, many people will use a chisel, a sharp chisel, to do that. And we can go along, and depending on the angle that you're using and what angle your chisel sharpened at, you can get an effective way of cleaning that glue off. But look, if you find that you're kind of going like this and gouging the wood, the next thing you can do is make one of these little shop-made jigs. And I'll put a link at the end of this video on how you can make that. It's very simple, as you can see. And that way you can set it at whatever angle you want, and whatever angle works for the chisel that you're working with. Whether it's sharp or dull, it'll make a difference, the angle that you set it at, and you can easily adjust that so that you can make your chisel turn into a better glue scraper and take that glue off right after your glue up. Many of the wood clamps that we use have little ridges on sometimes the front or the back, and those are to help allow the clamp to grip the steel more easily. One of the problems when we're using a clamp like this is sometimes, as hard as I try, sometimes I still end up getting a little bit of glue on there. And of course, when you get glue on there, sometimes the clamp won't hold properly. So you need to try and get that glue out. Now up here, it's not as important, but further down the clamp, it gets very important. What I like to do is I use these just on my drill, my cordless drill. You can use these wire brushes, and they come in different strengths. This one is very strong. I would not use this on a clamp. This one is, I call that medium, and this one is light. And I like this one on my clamp so that I don't do any damage. I don't want to burn those little ridges out or flatten them out. So I'll use a very light. It's super important that you wear glasses, eyeglasses, when you do this, because these little metal pieces in here, these little wire brush parts, they come out, and you never ever want to get one of those coming out into your eyes. So super important to wear eye protection in there, but a real quick, easy way of pulling out the glue and retaining all of your little nicks in there that help the clamp grab that bar. So one of the most important things of woodworking is being able to read the grain, and we need to look at face grains and we need to look at end grains. And when you're looking at end grains, sometimes you're looking at a board that hasn't been trimmed or has been a long time since it's been trimmed. These are very hard to read. The first thing to do is to just take a little bit off the end of that, but even that may not solve the problem for you. The next thing you can do is just dampen the end, and the different grains will absorb moisture at different rates, and you can see much clearer what the grain of the wood is that you're working with. So try that for grain reading. If you're working on your bandsaw and maybe you're cutting strips whatever it is you're cutting, and you don't want to get your hand too close to the blade. What you can do is make a simple push block like this, and all it is a flat piece of plywood with a little bit of a hitch on the end, and at some point you're going to be driving the blade into the end, but that's fine because you can cut that off or redo that later on, or you could even glue another piece on there later on. So this can last you a long time, and it's very simple because it moves around, so it works like a fence. It basically gives you another way of holding the wood. And I'm just going to push this wood through so you can see how easy it works. And that way you can cut off as much wood as you want and keep your hands well away from the blade. Well, before I disappear today, I want to remind you that I will post that video up here on how to make a do-it-yourself sharpener for your chisels and maybe even your plane blades, and certainly a scraper assistant for taking the glue ups off the glue off your glue ups. So you might want to have a look at that. And if you haven't already subscribed, I invite you to do that because I've got a special finishing video coming up and I'm still working on it, probably in the next week or two. And if you subscribe and click the notification bell, you'll know when that video comes up because you'll want to see it. There's some new techniques that are pretty much unheard of that I'm going to reveal on that finishing video. So you'll want to check that out. I'm Colin Canet for Woodwork Web. Thanks for watching today.